And just want to check that we are streaming. Yep, we are live. So yes, England won the game, 37-18 in the end. But let's be honest, the thing that's going to happen, and I'm sure it's probably already happening, it was happening during the game, is we're having a Twitter and probably a Facebook meltdown as well because of one incident that happened at the end of the first half. So that's going to be disappointing because, let's be honest, we don't want to be talking, I don't want to be talking, moaning about refereeing decisions, but I'm afraid that's what's going to happen from this one. In the first 20 minutes, and hi Dan, James Chalk is in the live chat saying Australia were absolutely shambolic, and they were for the first sort of 20 minutes. England were on top, and they just weren't really managing to take advantage of their of really all their possession and territory at that point. It started off really poorly for Australia, with Dame Helen Petty getting charged down from the kickoff, which then Australia managed to regather, but they got bundled over their line. So it was a 5-metre scrum for England. And one of the things that came out of this one was the England scrum was dominant during this game. That gave the platform, and the pass goes out to Johnny May, and Johnny May scored in the corner. Question in the live chat as to what's wrong with Australian rugby, such downfall. Go have a look at my the video called Shortcut to Checker, which looks at basically what was wrong with Australia. I put that out earlier. Earlier today or yesterday, depending on which part of the world you're in. Dame Helen Petty got drawn in, didn't trust Genia to take out the to tackle would have been Ben Youngs at time 9, and Johnny May went in the corner pretty easily. England didn't help themselves straight after that because Itoje at the line out charged straight through, giving away an offside penalty, which allowed Australia to pull 3 back pretty quickly, and so it was 7-3 after 5 minutes. But one of the problems that Australia had was their passing today. We had a try disallowed for forward pass. So there was Hooper towards the end missed there was a long forward pass from him as well. Genia totally missed Matt Tamua from this restart as well. So there were quite a few missed passes from Australia that hit the grass as well. And you got to say that whilst they were getting some turnovers early on, turnovers conceded were 9-6 at half time, Australia just were butchering those chances, or butchering the advantage they got from that with some poor passes. England also missed 2 penalties in that first half. Farrell hit the post, but luckily Australia let him off and gave a penalty soon afterwards, which allowed. So you can't really say that was 3 missed points because they get about 2 phases later, whatever. England got another penalty which let them off the hook, so which put it up to 10-3. As I say, turnovers were an issue for England, but Australian passes were poor. Looking at my notes here, and Daly then had a long kick as well, but and that came up short. And that's to say, England really dominated that first 23 minutes. Perhaps missed a penalty there, but didn't take advantage of their territory, the possession, to score another try, which left them vulnerable because Genia then intercepted to give Australia some territory, and then from the line out that came from that, I mean, he intercepted it, got turned over, but the kick out. We'll get on to the no-arms tackle in a second. The Australia put a good move in, showed that they could move the ball, so had the line out, moved the ball into the centre of the field for a ruck, went back to the side of the line out, broke down the line and scored in the corner. Showed some real good hands and great running. Unfortunately, one of those got called back for forward pass, but Australia showed that they can, with ball in hand, cause some damage there. There was then a tip tackle from Rodder. Yeah, it was careless rather than anything particularly dangerous, which allowed England to stretch it out again. And then Folau hit an absolutely lovely running line. Farrell got himself caught too far out, asking who won. England won 37-18 in the live chat there. And Thomas, I'll come back to your comment in a second. But hit a fantastic line and went over for a score. Daly at this point was having a bit of a mixed game. Obviously, he had that penalty, that long range penalty missed. Wasn't great under the high ball, but caught some other ones. And then we get to the big kind of talking point now. So it's going to have the big meltdown for the game. It's 13-10. It's half time. Rodder gets a break, is steaming towards the line, and then about sort of 3 to 5 meters out, with no one behind him, Farrell basically shoulder charges him. Basically throws his body in the way of Rodder in an attempt to try and stop him, because if he there's absolutely no arms in it, he bounces off, looks pretty stunned and lays on the ground for a little bit. The Rodder then gets stopped just millimeters from the line. There was no arms in it from Farrell, and yeah, you got to agree how that wasn't a penalty. With him being the last man, you got to say it was a penalty try. Would I have said it was a yellow card for the tackle? Maybe not, but for being a penalty try, they generally give yellow cards for those, don't they? Anyway, so the charge wasn't high or anything. There was no contact with the head or anything like that. But there was he just sort of just tried to put his body in the way, and there were absolutely no arms in it. So you got to say, everyone on Twitter and everyone in the commentary studio at half time were like, well, that's a penalty. Piper's just got that wrong. So yeah, it is what it is. We're going to have an absolute, say, Twitter and Facebook meltdown about it. But yeah, the referee got one wrong. Let's not try and hang dry and quarter him, please. After that, England got caught offside, which allowed a penalty to be scored on half time, which made it 13-all. Hooper did say, hey, there was no arms, it was a shoulder. Piper said, well, your guy, you led with the shoulder as well. He said, well, the ball carrier can. And Piper said, no, he can't. So, interesting discussion there to see whether that's what came over the referee's mic. So we'll see what happened. The second half was all one-way traffic, but let's just pop over to a couple of the comments in the live chat. Thomas English says, "Hi Paul, worst calendar year since 1958," is what they're saying. So that's that is quite amazing that that's their worst year in, what is that, 1958 to 1970 years? 60, 70 years? Something like that, 60 years. So that is pretty amazing. That's Australia's worst season for that. They did say that before the last try, so at 37-13, this was equal to England's biggest record win, the margin. That was last year. The try at the end stopped that. What happened to Australia having powerful wingers? Well, they do have some powerful wingers available to them, but they obviously just chose to not to play them this weekend. I mean, we've seen Karevi out there. So I think Karevi got the right name. Anyway, so yeah, no, they do have powerful wingers at their disposal. They just decided they were going to try and play. They were going to give Maddox an opportunity this weekend. Into the second half, has Czech resigned yet? I don't know. I'm on live. I'm not following that. Into the second half, and then basically England took control of this game in the second half. It all was a bit messy. England it was breaking down, but Farrell came back round, sucked into Moore, got the offload to Daly, and Daly had a massive gap to run in and score a try. I thought Foley was too wide, but listening to Maggie Alphonse on the sideline, she reckons it was that Tamura got dragged in and that Foley was on the right man. So hey, she knows a bit more about rugby than I do. So a lovely running line by sport line by Daly and scored there. As I say, he had a bit of a mixed game. Not everything came off. He had a break. I think it was in the first half where he probably should have passed the ball, but got caught out. Then basically Cognasiga basically won the game, and this is one of the things that actually let's talk about the try first. Doesn't really look like, I mean, everyone's lined up. There's no particular gaps in defence, but Cognasiga hits or runs into Dame Helmet-Petty. Dame Helmet-Petty hits him, bounces off, and looks a bit worse for wear on the ground. And Cognasiga basically stays upright, then shows some great balance and steps to go all the way. Then he claims a high ball straight afterwards, and nearly goes all the way. Hooper just stops him on the line. Had Slade outside him, but you've got to say that Cognasiga, you think he's going to get there. So yeah, nothing wrong with him having a go on that one. But what this shows is having that powerful winger. This is one of the comments from the chat there. Really does help. And if you think that this is a change of balance in the side here, we've had a side that used to be Ford, Farrell, JJ, Jonathan Joseph, Daly out wide, May out wide, or Nowell, and then Mike Brown at fullback. My problem with that side was there was no weight in it. Lots of really good runners, but really not much weight. If you look at the side now, you've got Farrell, Teo, who's a big boy, Slade, who got replaced by Manu Tuilagi, who's another big boy, Cognasiga out wide, who's a very big boy, May and Daly. So you've got a mixture there of the pace of Daly and May, the playing ability of Farrell and Colin Slade, and then the big boys around them as well. Because when Manu replaced Slade at one point, you've got to say that Teo, with the backline with Teo, Manu Tuilagi, and Cognasiga in it, it's probably one of the biggest backlines we've ever seen from an England side. I'm just trying to think of if we had Vunicola, gone blank now. Vunicola on one wing, and maybe when we had Vanahan on the other wing, we maybe had an equally big sort of side as backline as well. But it's been a long time since England's had that weight and so on. They can just bash it up with when there isn't anything on when the backline is set. So yeah, definitely not just a tactical shift in replacing Farrell, of having one playmaker in Farrell rather than Ford and Farrell, but also there's a big change there in that in the size and weight. Think about what happened down in Argentina during the Lions tour when we had Ford, Slade and Lazowski. You got three playmakers in there with no weight at all. So it's a big change as to how England are playing their rugby. The scrum was dominant all game, and a penalty scrum allowed England to stretch it out to 30-13. And then there was, and Dane Helmet-Petty had a good day with ball in hand going forwards. Had 2 or 3 big breaks, and haven't looked at the metres made yet, but he's going to be up there, I think, with metres made with ball in hand for Australia. But defensively, he had a really torrid time. Some good moments on the high ball and some bad ones, and then also, getting bounced by Cognasiga, because whilst Cognasiga was wearing 14, he played on the left wing, and Daly in 11 played on the right wing. So yes, maybe a bit of mind games there as to who would play on which side. But we had an opportunity where Australia had a 5-metre line out. They were going wide. The ball got turned over, got loose. Henry Slade had it, and boom, kicked it downfield. May and Cognasiga both actually were running at pace together, but May got there first, tapped it on, and then put it down over the line. Unfortunately, the first kick that Slade made hit the line and went out. So then Manu came on after that big back line. And yeah, the second half had all been about England, but Wigglesworth made a break down the blind side. The ball came back. This one we had Ford and Farrell on. Manu Tuilagi ran a great dummy line, sucked in all the defenders, and allowed Farrell to wrap around and go and put it down for 37-13, and the game was well and truly over, obviously, by then. Australia came back, got a consolation try at the end. Dame Petty, as I say, long break, great break. His support runners just seemed to go the wrong way. You can see he wanted to pass one way, and his support runner suddenly cut behind him. You're like, you're in wrong. That communication between the players just isn't there for Australia at the moment. Defensively, it's not there either. We talked Tamura getting sucked in. I thought Dame Petty got sucked in at times. Other players getting sucked in, leaving gaps. So whereas England, Coxine was just powered through the player that was there, but the defensive line was set up at that point. But yeah, there's just some problems there for Australia. So Fanau put it down for his second try after a grubber through from Foley, and that finished it off at 37-18. I was going to have a quick check through some of the stats before we head off and watch Wales versus South Africa. Sorry, just bringing up the stats now. So we also had those missed kicks from where both sides missed a couple of kicks. Meters run in the end was slightly higher for England, 408 to 309. Australia had the upper hand in that in the first half, because in the first half Australia had slightly more possession at 52% possession, and it was about 50-50 at half time. Looking at in the second half though, England then stepped it up to have 56% possession, 62% territory. Yeah, Australia just didn't really get out of their half, didn't get into the England 22. Again, at half time, Australia had the slightly upper hand on the clean breaks. In the end, it finished 11-8 to England. And the turnovers evened themselves out. As I said, at half time, it was 9-6. By the end of the game, it was 15-14. So those turnovers evened them, or England had better at the turnovers in the second half as well. Tackling, England's tackle set up at 82%. Australia were in the 80s at half time. They've dropped it back down to 75%, which again, their tackling in the second half fell off as well. And then I think England's also disciplined that second half. Looking at numbers, I think they might have given up 5 penalties in the first half and none in the second half. It really went down. There was definitely, so looking at the chat, there was definitely some very horrible passes from Australia today. And yes, the Farrells should have been penalised, should have been a penalty try, and probably a yellow card. And remember, that was when it was 13-10, so that would have changed the game to 13-17 at half time rather than 13-all, and who knows what would have happened from then. But that's all if, buts and maybes now. You can't go and change the past and try and figure out what would have or would not have happened. Looking at some of the players on the attacking side of things, Cokanasiga had 103 metres running with the ball, which was a top for England. Obviously, they had that try and another break as well, 2 afterwards next to each other. That's probably most of that. Mayitz has only had 37 metres, relatively speaking, but he did a lot of running without the ball and chasing. His work rate really has picked up. Been impressed by that. Amongst the forwards, Carl Sinclair, 12 carries for 20 metres. 20 metres seems to be just one of those carries, but he had a very good one there. And that Mark Wilson with 17 carries for 60 metres. He had a big game today as well. So on the Australian side of things, Dame Petty, 146 metres running with ball in hand. He was good going forwards. He just had a bit of a bad day at the back. With 11 carries, he also topped the number of carries for the Australian team as well. Other people, Falau got 53 metres. He had obviously a good break in that try. And then Rodder got through a bunch of work, as did Hooper, as you'd expect as well. On the defensive side of things, for England, Farrell, 9 tackles, 3 missed. So that's like better than last week. But he did again run out of the line a bit. He had that no arms tackle. you've got a question mark if the Farrell's control. A couple of chats in there about me. I used to play hooker, but yes, a long time ago. Maritojo, 11 tackles, non-missed. The backs all got through a bunch of work. Courtney Lawes, 10 tackles. Brad Shields, 11 tackles. Sam Underhill, 13 tackles. Brad Shields had a good game today. Been lots of question marks about him and his role in the team, but he was busy. Got through a few carries. Did some link play as well. I think he plays out one of those when you're playing a 1-3-3-1, which I think most teams do nowadays. He was one of the. He's kind of like one of those plays out wide on attack. And then also 13 tackles from Sam Underhill. I mean, that's what you expect him to do. He gets through a lot of tackles. Mark Wilson, 6 tackles, but he did a lot of carrying. That was his main role today. Henry Slade, quiet game with the ball in hand, a couple of kicks, but 6 tackles there, non-missed, solidly defensively. Over onto the Australian side of things, Kepu, Coleman, Hooper all got through, high number of tackles. As you'd expect into double figures. In the backs, Foley actually got through quite a few, 7 made, 3 missed. He's not the biggest of guys. Discipline, Sio and Kepu, 3 each, and you've got to say that the scrum was a big problem for Australia. You can see that in the in those penalty stats, in the fact that both props gave up 3, both starting props gave up 3 penalties each. No one for England gave up more than 1 penalty, and that's the story of the day. Brad Shields finally pitched up after 6 games. Yeah, I mean, look, it takes time for people, for players to fit into new systems. It takes time for players to get used to where they're living and stuff. If you talk to Ben Darwin, the ex-Australian international who runs Gainline Analytics, he reckons that it takes 2 years for a player to get used to a new club and to get back to playing at their best. Now, that can go up and down depending on how good the club is, but on average it takes 2 years. So, yeah, it's not surprising it's taken Brad Shields a few games to get used to it and to get into the systems. And to the different style of play you get up in the Northern Hemisphere compared to the Southern Hemisphere. It's not like he's moved from 2 clubs. It's not like he's used to Aviva Premiership, Gallagher Premiership play, and then has moved there. So I think, yeah, the guy needed time to get into that sort of system. Another player who always takes time is Jack Nell, for example. I remember on the Lions tour, didn't have a great game against the Blues early on, but ended up being a test player at England against France. Dropped that ball, wasn't great for that either. So yeah, there's been a few players that take time to settle in. Cognizant is someone who's obviously slotted in and done very well. Sometimes it's easier out in the wing than necessarily further closer in. So there we go. Very good game, good game, a good November for England, having beaten South Africa in a very narrow one, lost to New Zealand in a narrow one, beaten Japan after a poor first half, but a very good second half performance, and beaten Australia again with a dominating second half performance, and perhaps the first half had the upper hand in at least for the first quarter, but didn't get the points, and then Australia came back into that second half, into that second quarter of the game up until half time. Big question marks for Australia though. Lost to Wales, lost to England, beat Italy, but Italy had 2 disallowed tries early on as well. So not being a good tour for Cheika, not being a very bad year for Cheika. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to see how he goes. Right. Time to head over and watch Wales versus Africa. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel. It would be great to hit 2,000 followers, 2,000 subscribers, sorry. And then up here and down here, for those on the recording, there are some 2 videos that you'll absolutely adore.